Welcome back to AV Veterans Talk. We're continuing our conversation with this week's guest, John Roth. So, I always, these interviews, get a current take on, I didn't bring my flag in today. I can't believe I didn't bring in. I have a flag that was flown on the USS Arizona, and how we look back, and because your father had that World War II history, and I know you've really embraced his legacy. I was with you the day you flew in a P-38 Lightning over in Arizona.
Oh boy!
At the Grand Canyon.
Oh boy!
And they crammed you in the back seat of that. And
well, that was what, 2 pounds of lard and one of the biggest shoehorns you ever saw to get me in there.
But you did not want to miss out on that experience.
No, not at all.
And it was kind of neat because your pilot that day was.
Jeff Harris.
No, not Jeff.
No.
It was his dad was an 80th guy. No, he
was an 80th guy.
80th guy. Oh my gosh!
I can't think of it right now.
Stuff. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But boy, he run that P-38 out with you in the back there.
No, he kept it straight and level for me. He was a nice guy.
Not. You came down that field.
Oh yeah, we kind of came across below the top of the hangar at about 375.
Right.
It was cooking.
Yeah, it was. And it was really a joy to kind of see you relive that history. But also thinking back to your dad, that generation, the World War II generation, and their legacy, because now as we lose them now to where there's, like I said, there's only a very few left. Just a handful left. Today's generation, looking back on that, what do you wish the current generation would get from that generation's service?
Well, if they could learn from those guys, and they put their all into it. They knew that they had to do it, and we have this generation today that lives in the, what do they call them, the millenniums, that live in the garage of their parents or the basement of their parents, and they don't want to do a darn thing for their country.
Right.
They're just excess baggage.
Yeah, well, that's a tough way to put it, but
because it's mostly an all-volunteer military right now. The ones that we have in there, they're good ones.
Yes,
they're doing the job, and they're doing it right.
Right.
And they're willing to do it. But we certainly are overtaxing them. I mean, you can tell it from the PSD issues now, where the guys have made too many tours. You can't kill them like that.
Yeah.
Especially when they're going out to lay their life down for you and me.
Yeah, that's really hard for people to grasp, because during the World War II era and that generation, when they came back, when they walked away from the service, they walked right back into their civilian world, and I think going through the depression and not having anything, and living with that struggle. When they got back out of the military, they embraced, even if they had a great GI Bill. And they had opportunities they never had before, but they really embraced it, and they were so happy. They didn't come back, pointing, "Hey, look at me."
Yeah.
It was like, "Oh, my childhood sweetheart, picket fence, house, get up 9 to 5, and build a life." And
they were happy to be alive and happy to have an income and a family.
Absolutely.
And the ones we have today coming back, they're there, but they tend to want to lean on society to, woe is me,
Yeah, and that's hard how we deal, because we have such good-hearted people in society that are trying to reach out to make a difference. But you hit the nail on the head. We keep sending them back.
That's the problem.
And back, and they get worn down, and they just they get to a point where they get bitter. It's funny. I've interviewed Pearl Harbor survivors that were basically there on December 7th, 1941, and they stayed the duration of the war, and they ended up in, Tokyo Bay, and they came back, and it was like, once again, they just rolled up their sleeves, and they'd been through a whole war for 4 years.
Getting on the point where they keep sending them back and back. World War II, you were sent and you stayed. You didn't come back till it was over.
Exactly, especially those guys in the Navy.
Oh yeah.
And things, they get on a ship and they were in the war for the duration.
And then the poor guys in Europe, You know, we finished the war in May. They're loaded up and shipped to the Pacific.
Absolutely.
You know, it ain't over with you guys. Get going.
Yeah. And so, you know, your dad, you know, interact with you about the camaraderie. We have a camaraderie today now with the guys in the military, and with all the technology we have, they can stay in touch with each other. But also, I think that's kind of sometimes a crutch, because they can't let go. And coming back home, they still interact with their buddies that are in different parts of the country. And it's not like the American Legion and the VFW of those generations.
But you know, there's a brotherhood there.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And you're not going to leave that brotherhood.
Right.
You know, it's more treasured than even your own family sometimes.
Right. Yeah. You know, going back just to think of you at Travis up there and watching those guys get off those airplanes coming back from Vietnam and kissing that tarmac, and so glad to be home. Going through that generation like we did, in the strife and the struggle of the American soldier during that time period, because there was a draft. A lot of those guys went. They didn't volunteer, but a lot of guys did volunteer. You know, when you think back to those days and those guys coming home and the way they were treated by the country, I guess we're kind of blessed today, because we do have a lot of people that our returning soldiers do get embraced.
My last year up at Travis, we were not allowed to wear our uniform off base.
Yeah.
Too close to San Francisco and all the hippies.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, like I said, I always enjoyed watching the guys get off and kiss the ground. The ones that were the hardest to take was every other morning at 4 o'clock when the air evac had landed with all the wounded.
Yeah.
And then 2 to 3 times a week when the coffin bird would come through. You know, a 141 that was just one solid layer of coffins from the nose to the tail.
Oh boy.
That was hard. The first time I walked in one of those airplanes, the emotional thing was unbelievable. You know, these are all my buddies. They're all people from my country.
Those are all high school students that...
Yeah, some of them, you're right. Some of them weren't past 18, 19 years old.
Absolutely. They're so young. And, wow, that just...
Well, that's what made the other one so much more enjoyable, when you'd watch them get off and kiss the ground. You guys are still walking and talking. Way to go, dudes.
Absolutely. And we never forget. So, anyway, I guess we'll wrap this up. And I think we're good. And I guess want to thank you for coming in and hanging out and sharing a little bit of the history of the Roth.
The Roth family at Edwards.
The Roth family, and it's very storied and historical. And we want to thank you and obviously your dad for serving our country, and the
my brother also was
yeah.
employed at Edwards for 35 years. He was an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And he did very well for himself. When he retired, he was the technical director to the Flight Test Center commander.
What was his name?
Dan was at the top of the list.
There you go, Dan Roth.
Yep.
Yeah, wow. So great history at Muroc and Edwards Air Force Base.
Yep.
Well, with that, I think we'll wrap it up, and thanks, and we'll see you. I see you at church.
Oh, every Sunday.
Every Sunday, okay. We'll see you later then. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
I'm Bob Alvis, and thanks for joining us for this segment of AV Veterans Talk.